Hey, everybody, welcome back to Practical Liberty. My name's Henry Bingaman, and this is actually my second take at recording this episode. See, I had this thing recorded, all set up, ready to go, and then I was just watching it earlier to get it all set up for the podcast feeds and YouTube channel, and I wasn't happy with it. I just don't feel like I really provided quite enough value. So here I am at just about 9 p.m. on Thursday night, re-recording this episode. But it's an important topic, so I wanted to make sure I did touch on it. And that is managing your reputation, especially as a freelancer. So as a freelancer, you kind of live and die on your reputation. If you have a good reputation as a freelancer that does good work, that's reliable, your business life is just going to be a lot easier. Clients are going to enjoy working with you over and over again. It's not going to be that hard to find new clients. And in general, you'll just be happier. It's better to be liked than it is to be disliked, which the flip side of that then obviously is if you have a bad reputation, your career as a freelancer is just going to be miserable. You're going to always have to be explaining certain situations. New clients are going to be harder to come by because you have to find people outside of the circle that know you. So the one thing you definitely want to do is make sure you have a good reputation. Now, there are a couple ways of doing this that I want to talk about today. The first thing you have to do is avoid some of the big mistakes. Now, I'm known as a copywriter. I was a freelance copywriter for just about 15 years. I got up to a 7-figure income. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to freelancing. And it seems like over the past, 5 or 6 years, there's a few people online, those fake online gurus that are teaching copywriting courses. And they're teaching people allegedly how to freelance. But what they're actually doing is ruining people's careers before they even get started. And I'm sure this translates to design and coding and any other person teaching freelance out there. What these so-called gurus do is they teach you to sell yourself like it's a business opportunity type thing. So they're teaching you basically how to get a client to pay you as much money upfront as possible and for you to do the least amount of work. Now, it is possible, of course, to sell yourself to a client and get an enormous amount of money upfront. So, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. I've seen some people charging for their very first copy projects. As a freelancer, that's just insane. You're not worth that yet. You will be, you can be, but you have to get there. You have to put in the work on your own to get there. Now, I could teach you how to sell yourself for $10,000. What it really comes down to is very cleverly misrepresenting the quality of work you can do. So, for example, I could give you my portfolio of copy pieces that have sold $300 million worth of products online, and you could say, this is the kind of work I'm going to do for you. Now, if the client doesn't do any research and just hires you, assuming that you wrote those letters, even though you didn't necessarily technically say you wrote them, they could write you that big check, but then you're not going to be able to deliver. You can't just swipe big promos and expect to have the same results. There's a lot of psychology that goes into copywriting and selling. So that is one big mistake I see new freelancers make. They go out there, they overcharge, they let the client down, and then they burn their career for the rest of their life, essentially. Their name is now mud, especially if that client is well connected. The other thing they've done is they've ruined that client for some other freelancers who come along and do good work at reasonable rates. So, you've often spoiled that client for future people as well. Not always, but sometimes that's the case. Now, the flip side of that is sometimes people go out there and they charge nothing for their first few projects. They do it on spec, or they do it, just to get the portfolio experience or the portfolio piece. This is also, it can work, but in my experience, this is a mistake. When you don't charge the client anything for the work you do, especially if it's customized work, they're not going to value that work at all. They're going to not use it. They're going to change the work you did to suit their own needs. So they don't have any faith in you to deliver a good product. And in general, it's just going to be a terrible experience for everybody involved. Usually what ends up happening when you do free work is you waste everybody's time. So you have to consider both sides of the coin. You don't want to do free work. You want to get paid at least something. Now, your first few clients, you can charge very low numbers. You can charge just a couple $100. You could charge $1,000 if it's a bigger project, something like that. You can charge a lower amount of money for something that you'll later end up charging 10 times. But you want to get paid no matter what for the work. First of all, it sets you up in your own mind as a paid freelancer. And getting that first check is a big deal in every freelancer's life. But second of all, it starts building your reputation as a professional. Professionals charge for their work. And the reputation you want is as a professional who does good work. The second mistake I see too many freelancers make across a lot of different types of industries is they're difficult to work with. Now, a lot of us get into freelancing because we have unique personalities, let's call them. Maybe we're not the most sociable people in the world. Maybe we have a little bit of awkwardness. Maybe we're rough around the edges. We wear whatever clothes we want. We cuss like sailors. That's not uncommon in the freelancer world. But you still want to be very easy for the client to work with. Now, there is going to come a point at some point in your freelancer career where you're going to get frustrated with the client. Clients are frustrating. The great Gary Halbert, he was a very famous copywriter, one of the best of all times. He very famously wore around a hat that said clients suck. Now, Gary had a reputation as somebody that could do amazing work. So he got away with this, and it was kind of seen as funny, but you don't want to be aggressive with your clients in general. Now, Gary also said that goes doubly true when you're your own client. So everybody gets frustrated with the people they work with at some point. That's just the nature of humans interacting. But you want to be very easy to work with whenever you can be. One of the things that makes freelancers difficult to work with is when they bring the client problems instead of solutions. That's just putting more work on their plate. So let me give you an example from my own career to kind of illustrate this. There was one time I was doing a financial promotion for an energy company. And we had this whole promotion that I had written built around the idea of an iron flow battery. It was really cool energy storage technology, but it was just one aspect of what the expert liked about the company and why he was going to recommend it. The day before we were set to record the promotion, the company announced that they were shutting down that division. They were going to kill the iron flow battery concept entirely. So I was pretty frustrated with this. It obviously meant I had to kill most of the work I'd done. But I didn't come to the client and say, hey, here's all this work I did. You can't use it. Pay me my kill fee. I'll go away. Instead, what I did is I went to the client and I said, hey, they killed this division. As long as the expert still likes this stock, here's 3 other angles I could take. And I actually ended up going back and in about 3 days, rewriting the entire promotion. And it went on to do, I think, $5 or $6 million in sales. So if I had just gone and said, hey, they killed this, what do I do? That's just dumping work on the client. But instead, I went with the solution and implemented it, and everybody was happy. And honestly, it built up my reputation as somebody that could save the day when something goes wrong. So what you want to do, you don't want to go to the client and say, hey, I can't do this, right? You want to come to the client and say, hey, this isn't going to work for this reason. And here are 2 or 3 options that I can give you to move forward with this project. Now, that makes you somebody that comes to the client with solutions, not just problems. As a freelancer, your job is to take work off the client's plate, not give them more work to do. So by being a solutions-focused person, you're going to be a lot easier to work with, and you're going to start building your reputation that way. The next mistake that I see a lot of freelancers make is that they don't have any boundaries, especially boundaries around their time. They'll let clients call them at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night with an emergency. Now, in some cases, you can make yourself available on tight deadline projects, but you want to make sure you're charging appropriately for that. As a freelancer, you're going to earn respect of the clients a lot more if you set those firm boundaries. So you can have working hours. That means the client can't call you after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Or if you want to be like most freelancers, a lot of us like to work late. You can call your working hours 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. What you can set it whatever you want, as long as you have a boundary and you let the client know. You can also have boundaries about how the clients reach out to you. Very famously, Dan Kennedy only accepts communications by fax, and he's one of the highest paid copywriters of all time. He's very difficult to get a hold of, but that actually sets his reputation as, somebody that's worth a lot because he's so protective of his time. So setting these boundaries actually sets you up in the view of the client as a more high worth type of person to work with. It sets your value higher and it sets you apart. And at the end of the day, people respect boundaries. They want to know where the boundaries are, but they also want you to enforce them. Right? Nobody likes somebody that they can just push around. It just leaves a bad taste in the client's mouth at the end of the day. So make sure you set boundaries and don't budge on them. The next mistake I see too many freelancers make is viewing other freelancers as their competition. Look, this is a B2B world. When you're freelancing, you're mostly selling your services to clients, to other businesses. And there are no better contacts to get in with other businesses than the other freelancers that do almost the exact same thing you do. Sometimes it can be the exact same thing. Look, the way I built my network was by meeting other copywriters. So if you want to build a strong network, one of the things you have to do is be kind to the people who are your quote unquote competition, because this really is a cooperative industry. If this really was as cutthroat a world as people seem to believe it is, everybody would be out of business, right? We rely on each other. Now, one of the best ways to network with other people in your industry is to just be generally helpful to them. So you can help people that are way more experienced than you. send them interesting articles, keep connections, introduce them to potential clients, introduce them to new ideas. You can be very helpful with people that are at the same skill level as you have. I did a lot of this, or in the first, I would say 5 or 10 years of my career even. I networked with other copywriters who were in the same basic phase of their copywriting career as me, and we'd bounce ideas off each other. We'd review each other's copy and just introduce each other when we could to different clients. Again, there is more than enough work out there for everybody. So you can't have that famine mentality. It is going to be way better for your reputation in the long run to be seen as helpful to both your quote unquote competitors, the other people that are freelancing in your industry, as well as your clients. All right, another very common mistake I see is missing deadlines. Look, I know this sounds simple, and you've probably heard this advice over and over again. You got to hit your deadlines, but you'd be shocked at how many freelancers are just oblivious that they even had a deadline. They make up excuses, they turn it in late. This really is one of the secrets to success in freelancing. If you do what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it, if you hit your deadlines and do quality work, you're going to be ahead of 80 to 90% of other freelancers out there. For whatever reason, freelancers have a well-deserved reputation as being a little flaky. So if you hit your deadlines, if you just act as a professional, you're going to get a great reputation because so many people don't. People love working with people they can rely on. And one of the biggest ways to prove that you're dependable is to hit your deadlines. All right. The last mistake I see too many freelancers make is they don't set clear expectations and have clear communication with their clients. Now, I've been on both sides of this equation. It's very easy for us as freelancers, especially if you're working from home on a project that you can do by yourself, to just kind of go into your cave and disappear for weeks at a time while you're doing the work. But you have to think about that from the client's end. They have no idea what's going on anymore. And that's very scary and frustrating for them. They don't know if you're doing work. They don't know if you're just forgot about them. They don't know if you're waiting like a college essay to get it all done in the last 2 days. And understandably, they're going to think your work suffers. So a great thing to do is just give a weekly update email to the client if you're working on a longer project. That could be Monday afternoon. It could be Friday afternoon. Just set a day that you know you're going to communicate with the client. It's even better if you can have a 15-minute check-in call with the client once a week. Now, sometimes that's not always feasible with people's schedules, but it normally is. Another great way of doing this, and one that will make you look very professional, is to have some type of online document that you can both access that keeps the client up to date with where the project is. A lot of people just do this through a Google spreadsheet or document. The point is, you want to have a place where the client can log in at his own convenience and just check on the work that's been done and the status of the project. Again, this looks incredibly professional, and it'll set you ahead of a lot of your competition. All right, I know this is a short episode this week, but I hope you got something out of that. And if you haven't heard, I'm launching a course in the next couple of weeks called Breaking Free. This is about how to build an incredibly high income as a freelancer. So what I'm actually going to do is play a clip that I recorded on last week's podcast that kind of walks you through the 4 modules of the course and everything in it. I named the podcast Practical Liberty because I believe in practical things you can do to make yourself more free. And freelancing is definitely one of those things that you can do to make yourself more free. So with that said, I'm actually announcing an upcoming course that I'm going to release called Breaking Free. And this is how to take your skills and turn them into a freelance career that pays you an enormously high income. I'm talking $100,000, $200,000, even $500,000 or more. I'm going to be releasing this course in about 2 weeks from now. And I'll give you a link that you can get on the wait list if you're interested in learning more when it comes out, along with a big discount code for the initial beta launch. But let me run through what I'm going to be teaching in this course really quickly. So the course is going to be made up of 4 modules. These are all video lessons, but there are some exercises attached to them so you can actually implement these new skills that you're learning. And like it says, break free. So the first module is called Preparing to Break Free. It would be a mistake for most people to just burn their bridges behind them, quit their job, and say, now I'm a freelancer, start paying me. That's not really how it works. There's a little bit of preparation and work you need to do to be ready. It's probably not a good idea to just quit your job until you know you can replace the majority of your income with a freelance career. So there are a few important things I'm teaching in this module. One of the important ones is an exercise I developed to discover your mobile money skill or your mobile money skills, because in fact, when we talk about the skill stack, you need more than one of them to become a top tier freelancer. This is really cool. It takes your talents and your interests and it combines them into a bunch of skills that you can use to market yourself to the correct clients, the clients that'll hire you. And they'll be really excited to hire you when you develop the right mobile money skills. The next exercise is developing what I call your viral pitch. The viral pitch harnesses a common feature in most business owners, if not all business owners, to get you in front of warm leads. So you don't have to pitch yourself hard. You'll be making this kind of soft pitch to a bunch of people who will then spread the word for you. It's designed to be a very shareable pitch so that basically you have an army of people out there pitching your services for you. In this module, I also talk about why you don't need a business plan. If you're starting a traditional business and you need to raise money, you definitely do. But there's a lot of things that freelancers get caught up on. They think they need a business plan. They think they need office space. They think they need business cards. There's a lot of things that you think you need. And I'll talk about which of them you do and don't need, when they're useful, how to use them, and the only basics you need to actually get started as a freelancer. And then, of course, I'll talk about when it'll be okay to quit your job. And I talk about different methods of going about doing that. So if you're worried about having that conversation with your boss, if you're worried about having that conversation with your family, this module kind of covers what you need to know, and it helps you do it in a kind of safe way where you're not going to be just pulling the rug out from under everybody. Module number 2 is what a lot of freelancers get caught up on, and that is landing your perfect client. Now, there's a way that most freelancers, when they first get started, go about trying to land their perfect client, and it's painful, and it makes you less money than you otherwise could. So I'm going to talk about the what not to do, and then I'll talk about the easiest way to get a client to hire you. A lot of new freelancers go out there and they just start pitching themselves to everybody. They go up to an employer and say, hey, I do this. Can I help you? What you're actually doing in a lot of the cases, the way most people frame it, is they're giving the client work to do. And you don't want to do that. You want to make this painless for them. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to say yes and cut you that check. Then I talk about actually pitching yourself. Now, most people go out there and they pitch their service. That's the wrong thing to do. There's actually only 5 things you pitch to a client, and none of them are your service. Now, you probably know that you sell the benefit, not the feature. But for some reason, freelancers go out there and pitch their features, what they're doing, not what the client gets out of it, the emotional release the client gets. So these are the only 5 things you can sell your client. I also go over the magic 3-word phrase that you use to pitch yourself to get clients to trust you and believe in you. A lot of people get tripped up on pitching themselves. We're too modest. We're told to be modest in this culture. But there's a way to pitch yourself with this phrase that doesn't make it seem like you're bragging, but still convinces the client that you're a high value freelancer. I talk about the embarrassingly simple way that I got my first client. This works for a lot of people. It could probably work for you. I talk about whether or not you should do spec work to get clients, or in other words, doing free work to kind of prove your worth to them. Usually you don't want to do this. There are a couple exceptions, and I go over those. I go over a foolproof method for actually connecting with whales. Whales are clients that can pay you 6 figures all on their own in a year. These are the clients you want. You want to go after those whales, and you want to be able to have a flow of them. And then I go over the client flow method, which is, it comes from my angel investing experience. You want deal flow in angel investing, where there's enough deals coming in that you get to be very selective about the one you choose. Well, I apply the same method to client flow, where so many clients are coming to you that you get to pick and choose the best of the best. And that's really where your career becomes more fun. Module 3 is something a lot of freelancers need, but don't know they need, and that is professional client management. One of the problems that freelancers experience is that they get in a position, they get hired by a client, and then they get treated in the exact same way that client treats his employees, which is natural and understandable for the client to do. He wants to hire you because he doesn't have to pay you all those benefits, and you get to just go away when the project's done. If the project's done, there's no severance packages, nothing he has to worry about. But at the same time, if you want to maximize your income as a freelancer, you want to be able to get full autonomy on your projects. You want to be more in control. So John Carlton, the great copywriter, calls this being the adult in the room. So I talk a lot about how to do that, how to manage clients, and how to get them to want to give you autonomy on your projects. The next thing I teach is time management. And, time management is a huge thing for freelancers. It's in my early days as a freelancer, I spent hours and hours at my desk working unnecessarily. And honestly, I'm lazy and I procrastinate. So these are the time management tips that worked for me. If you're a lazy procrastinator, this is going to be a great section. It's going to help you out a lot. I talk about how to get clients to agree to outrageously high fees. Sometimes as a freelancer, it feels hard to get high fees, but there are some tips and tricks I can give you that will make clients happy to pay you those outrageously high fees. I have another lesson in this module about contracts. Contracts are important, not because they're particularly enforceable. If you're going to court to enforce a contract, it better be for over 6 figures in back pay. Mostly contracts are there to cover your butt, so they're CYA, and to make sure all the expectations are outlined, and so you have something to point back to. And in this, I'll give you a lot of examples of contracts that different freelancers have used, including a bunch of mine. I have a module on billing and invoicing. Sometimes clients just don't pay on time. They want to dispute things. So there's a professional, systematic approach to doing this that will just kind of make all that easier. And then a big one I talk about is crisis management for freelancers. In the real world, stuff happens. Sometimes it's your fault. Sometimes it's the client's fault. Sometimes it's just the world's fault. So how do you manage it? How do you manage a client when everything's going wrong? How do you make sure the client maybe it isn't happy, but is understanding of what happened and is not going to just kick you to the curb because a crisis happened? This is something a lot of freelancers deal with. There's a ton of stress involved. And if you don't know how to handle it, it can kind of upend your career. And if not upend your career, at least make you miserable for a couple of weeks or months. And then the last module is about scaling your career. So at what point in your career do you raise your rates? It's an important question. And most freelancers don't know how to raise their rates without taking off all their clients. They're afraid to lose their current client, so they don't ever raise their rates, and they get stuck in this lower than necessary income cycle. So I'm going to cover that in scaling your career. We're going to talk about dumping old clients. At a certain point, you outgrow clients as a freelancer. It's just a reality. But most of us kind of, because there's not the same tension as the employer-employee relationship, we don't like dumping our old clients. So there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. And if you want to have a long, happy career, I recommend using the good way to do it. And then there's the really advanced stuff in here, which is I talk about how to have a 7-figure career as a freelancer. Honestly, not a lot of people get here. It takes some guts to do it. You have to have a lot of confidence and a bit of experience. But if you want to know how to get to 7 figures as a freelancer, that's covered in this module. And then finally, in this module, I talk about how to diversify your income. So things like products, speaking gigs, stuff like that, ways to diversify your income. So if you want to scale back on the client work at some point, you have that option. Or if you just want to dramatically increase your income, this will help you get there too. So that is the course, the basic outline. I have a couple bonus modules, including one on how to set up your business in the right way so you don't get screwed on taxes. And that same module goes over how to pay as little taxes as possible. Again, 69,000 pages of the 70,000 pages of tax code, at least, are about not paying taxes. So it's hard to sift through all those. It's hard to know when they apply to you. So I have an expert tax lawyer who is coming on to talk about how to do that. And then I have another module about how to get out of your own way. You know, a lot of us have this head trash and lack of confidence and false beliefs that stand in our way of launching a freelance career or scaling it. There's a different block that comes in every step of the way when you're jumping up the income scale. I've dealt with a lot of these, so I'm bringing on somebody who's really helped me out, and I think we'll be able to get the head trash out of your way so you can start too. Now, this is just a quick overview. I will do a full sales pitch eventually for this, but I'm going to be launching this course in the next couple weeks. 2 weeks, hopefully, maybe 3 if I really need time to work out some kinks. Now, eventually, the plan is to sell this program for $1,000. You know, I'm teaching people how to make $100,000 a year, a lot more than that in many cases, double their income. If you're already a 6-figure salary earner, we could take you from 100 to 200,000. This is really valuable stuff. It's a skill that not a lot of people teach or teach the right way. And this is stuff I have a lot of experience with. You know, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've made every mistake in the book. So I think it's easily worth $1,000. But as I'm building out this course and discovering what people really need in it, I'm going to be expanding it and refining it. So when I launch it, the initial price for the first few months probably will be closer to about $500, probably $495. But if you get in on the beta launch, the initial launch of this, I'm going to give you 50% off that. So I'm setting up an email list that will mail out a discount code that's good for the first week after it launches. You can get on that list by going to henrybing.co/breakingfree, all one word. You get on there, you'll get on my email list, and you'll be tagged on the special list where you get the discount code that's good for the first week. Again, $250 for something that I'll be selling for $1,000 in the future. And you'll have access to all those updates as they come in. You have lifetime access to this course and everything that's ever added to it. So if you want to get on that list, just go to henrybing.co/breakingfree. All right. I hope you found this episode valuable. You know, freelancing really is the future of work. It's going to keep growing. And there's a huge opportunity because not a lot of people do it right. So if you do it right, you're going to set yourself ahead of the pack in so many different ways and really accelerate your career, and you'll be able to live a more free life. So that's all I got. I'll see you back here next week. Stay free.